Blackwater Community Hospital stood alone on the edge of rural Texas, a dark silhouette swallowed by miles of dead grass and a wind that never stopped howling. It had been abandoned for over 30 years after a so-called gas leak incident that killed 12 patients and 2 nurses. At least that was the official story. The locals, however, knew better. They refused to go anywhere near it, whispering that the hospital never truly emptied, that its long, dark corridors still echoed with voices after midnight. In 2022, a 26-year-old security contractor named Evan Brooks was assigned to watch the property for a weekend. Demolition crews were scheduled to tear it down, and his job was just to make sure no one trespassed before they started. He thought it would be an easy paycheck. A quiet couple of nights watching an old, dead building. He was wrong. When Evan arrived at 10:47 p.m., the first thing he noticed was the main entrance door. It was slightly ajar, creaking back and forth with a wind that didn't exist. The night air was perfectly still, heavy and silent. As he stepped out of his car, a faint, rhythmic beeping sound reached him from inside the empty lobby. It sounded just like a heart monitor, the kind that would signal a patient was alive and well. A patient who hadn't been in that hospital for decades. His flashlight flickered the moment he crossed the threshold. The temperature inside plummeted instantly. He exhaled, and a cloud of white vapor formed in front of his face. He could see his breath perfect. He muttered to himself, trying to rationalize it. Bad wiring, unstable power lines, that's all. But the hospital had no electricity. It was cut off the day it closed back in 1991, yet somewhere deep inside, the sound of machines kept beeping, a steady, rhythmic pulse in the heart of the decaying building. Evan forced himself to move deeper, his footsteps echoing down the long central hallway. Old medical posters with faded, smiling faces peeled from the damp walls. Rusted stretchers, some with dark stains on their canvas, blocked doorways like skeletal sentinels. The air was thick with the smell of old chemicals and wet concrete, a scent that crawled into the back of his throat. At exactly 11:23 p.m., the beeping suddenly stopped. The building fell into an unnerving silence. Then another sound replaced it, footsteps, soft, bare, and definitely not his. They were coming from the second floor, a light, shuffling sound that made the hair on his arms stand up. "Probably raccoons," he whispered, the words sounding hollow and unconvincing even to himself. Every instinct he had was screaming at him, telling him to leave. Ignoring the warning bells in his head, he climbed the main staircase, each step groaning under his weight. The second floor was even darker, the cold more intense. His flashlight beam trembled in his hand, cutting a nervous path through the oppressive darkness. At the far end of the long hallway, a single hospital room door was wide open, room 209. It seemed to be waiting for him. Evan cautiously stepped inside. The room was mostly empty, stripped bare, except for an old metal bed frame and a window shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. But then his light fell upon the wall opposite the door. Scrawled in something dark and smeared like dried blood were 4 words, "Don't let them see you." His pulse spiked, hammering against his ribs. Behind him, a voice, no louder than a breath, whispered directly into his ear. "Too late." He spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. No one was there. The hallway was empty. He quickly backed out of the room, his eyes scanning the darkness, but the hospital had changed. The corridor that was once just a straight path now stretched impossibly long before him, lined with dozens of identical doors on both sides. And from inside each room he could hear something shuffling, a dry, scratching sound. The shadows beneath the doors began to move. Something was crawling just on the other side, slithering in the darkness. Evan started walking backward, his gaze darting from one door to the next, not daring to turn his back on whatever was hiding within. Then the lights in the ceiling began to flicker violently, strobing in and out of existence, revealing quick, disturbing flashes of what was happening around him. He saw a hand, pale and thin, press against the grimy window of a door. A ghostly face staring from behind a tattered curtain. The hem of a patient gown dragging silently across the floor. An empty wheelchair, its wheels turning slowly, rolling toward him out of the darkness. His mind finally screamed at him to run. Heart pounding against his chest, Evan turned and sprinted toward where the staircase should have been. But it was gone. The stairwell had vanished, replaced by a solid wall. The hospital was rearranging itself, trapping him inside its labyrinthine halls. Then he heard it again. A long, drawn-out beep. The unmistakable sound of a flatline. A moment of silence followed before a voice crackled to life through the old PA system, whispering through a haze of static. "Code Blue, Evan Brooks, room 12. He froze in the middle of the hallway. How did they know his name? The air grew heavier, thicker, pressing in on him. He felt a presence behind him, a cold spot in the air that wasn't just the chill of the building. Slowly, fighting every instinct that told him not to, he turned around. A tall, thin figure stood there in the flickering light. Its limbs were unnaturally long, stretched and distorted. Its skin was pulled tight over its bones, so thin it was almost translucent. Its head twitched with every slight movement, a series of sharp bird-like jerks. It wore a faded hospital gown from decades ago, its name tag too worn to read. But where its eyes should have been, there were only two deep black holes, voids that seemed to pulse with an ancient darkness. It took a step toward him, a disjointed, horrifying motion that was both slow and terrifyingly fast. Evan ran. He sprinted down the hall, his boots slipping on the slick floor. But every turn led him to another empty ward, another abandoned operating room, another dead end. The figure followed, never speeding up, but every time the lights flickered, it was suddenly closer, its long limbs contorting as it moved. He ducked into the old IQ wing and slammed the heavy door shut, barricading it with a metal cart. His breath came in ragged, shaking gasps. He fumbled for his phone, desperate to call for help, but there was no signal. Instead, his screen showed a single, strange, repeating voicemail from an unknown number. He pressed play, and a chorus of faint, whispering voices filled his ear. "We're still here. We never left. You'll stay too." He dropped the phone as if it were on fire and scrambled backward. At that moment, the ICU monitors surrounding him flickered to life, their screens all glowing with an eerie green light. Every single screen displayed the same thing. A flat line, with his name printed in crisp letters above it. Evan Brooks. The door handle began to rattle. Then turn. Then, with a slow, agonizing creak, the door pushed open. The tall, eyeless patient crawled into the room, its body moving in ways it shouldn't, its bones cracking with every step. And behind it, several other shadowy figures followed former patients. Nurses, silhouettes of things that no longer belonged to the world of the living. Evan screamed, a raw, primal sound, and smashed a window with the leg of a broken chair. He scrambled through the jagged opening, cutting himself on the glass, and landed hard on the cold, damp grass outside. He didn't look back. He just sprinted toward the distant main road, gasping for breath, his lungs burning. After what felt like an eternity, he finally risked a glance over his shoulder. The hospital was pitch black again, silent, motionless, as if nothing had ever happened. He told himself he had imagined it all. A nightmare brought on by stress and the creepy atmosphere. But when he finally reached his car, something was waiting for him on the hood. A patient wristband. The plastic was old and yellowed, but the name printed on it was perfectly clear. His name, and beside it his date of death, tonight. Evan drove away that night and never returned. But the story doesn't end there. Some nights, late-night drivers passing the ruins of Blackwater Hospital claim they see a man's figure inside. He's pounding on the glass of a dark ICU window on the second floor, his mouth open in a silent scream, begging to be let out. They say he matches Evan's description perfectly. No one has seen Evan Brooks since that night. And the demolition crew, they swear the old hospital still has electricity, but only after midnight. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chills. Stay safe out there.